But we're going to listen to Brian Cuthbert now as well, sort of to give a presentation, and there'll be an opportunity to ask some questions as well with him as part of an informed panel. So Brian's going to talk through various bits and pieces at the minute, and we'll leave the questions for afterwards. So a round of applause, former Cork manager, Dr. Brian Cuthbert.
Thanks a million, Eugene, for inviting me up to the coaching conference. I said to Eugene when I came, met him this morning, and I said in 2010 or 11, I actually travelled up to this conference from home, and it went all downhill after that, Eugene. I was going gallant until then, and then it just went just very, very quickly. My background is, I'm a primary school teacher. I'm principal of a boys' national school in Bishopstown in Cork. About 420 students, all boys, so obviously they're very much into sport, just like myself. Played football and hurling at home all my life, obviously. Played inter-county a bit, never was good enough for senior inter-county football. Played with Cork Minors, under 21 hurling and football. Then I went into coaching, obviously through teaching, and I suppose very quickly fell in love with that. Got on to coach the Cork minor team, lost to Tyrone by a point in the 2010 final, and very quickly after that got involved with the Cork senior setup. Worst thing I ever did. I'm only joking. That didn't work out too well, putting it mildly, and moved on from that and decided that after experiencing minor environments and senior environments and seeing the huge difference between both, I said, you know, my interest certainly, and not through experience, but just my passion and interest was on developing youth athletes in around 14, 15, 16, 17. Why? I suppose I would go back to experience and I'd say a huge sense of togetherness, a huge sense of satisfaction, a huge sense of help and fathering and I suppose minding a group of inter-county minors felt very different than being inside in a senior dressing room with fellas who were going to work, fellas who had been successful before, fellas who had, which is perfectly fine, maybe a way of doing things that may be different to what minors would have as in terms of their perspective. So I suppose that after finishing with Cork in 2015, like many people involved in the GA, I need something to be doing all the time. I'm chairman of my club at home. I'm just fully immersed in this. So in, I'd say about 2016, 17 and 18, I went away to UCC to do a PhD, and it was only going to be in one thing, and that was in talent development in Gaelic games. And I haven't done it to, being honest about it, I haven't done it to get the letters DR anywhere near my name or anything like that, even though I see somebody put it on here. I've done it to allow myself the opportunity of finding out answers to questions I have, and I still have loads of more questions. So I suppose what I'm trying to do today is give you an insight into some of the stuff that I found along the way that would be applicable to you, whether you're in a club, whether you're in a school, or whether you're in an inter-county setup. And I suppose in that, one of the biggest things that I would find is that in comparison to other areas of development and other sports, we're dealing with something really, really complex here. We're dealing with something that a lot of us have ideas about, but I'm not sure whether or not we've been informed properly over the last 20, 30 years about what those ideas should actually look like. I suppose one of the biggest ideas we have is somebody starts out at the bottom of the road there, we pick him out as, or her out as being talented, and we put them on this journey and they get to the end. That's not actually how it works. Case in point, Conor McManus this morning. He wasn't on that road as a minor, but he was on that road at 20, and now 3 All-Stars later, and arguably one of the best players in the country. So the road and talent development certainly isn't one of these straight lines. It's one of the wavy roads with all the twists and the turns. Allows you to get onto the straight road at some stage. But you don't have to be on it at the start. And I suppose then, in our context, we look at the fact that we don't have a professional game, and only 1% at any moment, only 1% of our playing population is an inter-county player. So we put all this attention and work into this straight road, this superhighway, and only 1% of the guys get to the end. So at the very start of this presentation, I want you to think about two things. One, we don't actually fully understand what talent is. Now that's not a slight on anybody, but that's true. What does talent look like? Your idea of talent could be very different to my idea of talent. So why are we making this so difficult? We can make it a bit simpler. So I want you to think about potential. Potential. The potential to become talented at some point in time. But at 13 and 14, you can't be classified as being talented, but you can be classified as having potential to become talented. That's the first point. So, as I say, we're thinking about potential here, and this will marry up now in a minute. And then we think of NGBs all over the world and all the sports all over the world, and we think about the pyramid. And we adopt the same system ourselves here in Gaelic games. Now, there are reasons why we have to. But there are also reasons why maybe we shouldn't. So the pyramid is very sticky for an organisation. It's very sciencey. There's a kind of what they call a truthiness about it. Kind of true, kind of not true. And you start off with big foundations and you work your way up and you get to the top and you play in Crow Park. Now, if you just imagine that pyramid in your county or your club or your school, not right now, and you see, and I've examples of it all over the country, you see, 40 first years, 50 first years want to play football, and by the time third year comes, you're working with the best 20. Same with the academy. You might start off at a broad base, you go up, you go up, you go up. So the pyramid is actually a process of deselection, not selection, because you're omitting more than what you're keeping in. And in terms of, just if we take soccer, for example, right? Soccer in the Premiership, 90% of the kids who start into the academies in the pyramid don't ever get to play professional soccer. In German soccer, yearly, 40% of the children who are on the German national team are ejected at the end of the year. 40%. In the Bundesliga, 25% of the kids are ejected at the end of every year. Now, in your county, let's work out a projection. Let's work out what number are ejected. What percentage are ejected? Why are they not selected? Who has set the criteria? What would happen to them if they were kept in? How do we know that they're the right people that we're getting rid of? What if they were to stay within the system in 10 years' time, when we look at them, they could be different players? You're also making decisions around these pyramids and selection based on the game today. Gaelic football and hurling looks a certain way today. In 10 years' time, is the game going to look the same? I would say not. But yet you're selecting players to play in 10 years' time at elite level. If you look, and I looked at, if you looked at, there's a picture of the Lions, the Irish Lions, I'd say 12 years ago, and there was 6 or 7 Leinster guys, Shane Horgan and Shane Byrne and Brian O'Driscoll. And I looked at them, and I compared them to the last Lions team, where Brian O'Driscoll, Johnny Sexton and Sean O'Brien were in a photo. And the physique of the players were completely different, because the game has changed. Ryan spoke this morning about the game has changed over the last 10 years, and his experience as well in terms of strength and conditioning. So in 10 years' time, we're going to have a different game, but yet we're making the same selection decisions based on the game today. It doesn't make sense. Now, you're going to tell me you've only a certain amount of finance to manage all these players up through your system, so you can never keep as many as you want to. And somebody probably from a county board, probably the treasurer, is telling you you can only have 30, or you can only have 32, you can only have 40, or you can only have 28. To me, what you have to do is work out the level of risk the level of risk. If I kept these guys in for another bit longer, am I eliminating the percentage chance of getting this wrong? Because the pyramid is absolutely loaded with bias. I guarantee you, you check your squads, most of the boys and girls will be born in the first 3 months of the year. You've all heard the relative age effect. The first 3 months of the year. Why? Because they're bigger. They have a 12-month advantage over everybody else. I guarantee you when you check it, you'll see it. And all that the science is saying, in professional sport, it's actually the people at the bottom end, the guys who get in eventually, the guys born in October, November, December, they're the guys who are actually making it as elite players. How? How is that happening? That we put through some people through our system, but by the end of it we eject most of them and bring in people from the other side, from the outside. Why? Because, again, they've travelled what's called the rocky road. The guys who haven't made it at underage level have travelled a bit of a rocky road in terms of not being selected and a bit of knockbacks that they've taken and developed resilience and other attributes that they can use to go forward and to play at the elite level. So the pyramid is a failed model, but we still use it. So if we look at talent development, my interest is certainly in the area on the right-hand side. You have natural ability up on top, you have psychological characteristics coming in from here that are developed through time, you have the pathway down the middle, you have the environment here on the right, and you have talent as the output on the bottom. To me, this is where you can make change. This is where we need to go. This is my absolute passion, absolute interest in terms of where we are today in Gaelic games across the country. Eugene mentioned earlier, Garth, myself, Eugene, and another 7 or 8 people are involved in a very, very good committee at Croke Park level. We're trying to make evaluation on what's happening around the country at the moment in terms of all of those areas and eventually talent development. And we've taken data from 32 counties, we've analysed that data, and a lot of the times it's repeating itself. The same issues are cropping up all over the place. And for me, this one over here, the environment, that's where we need to get working. And I suppose my key point is the sharing of that environment and reproducing a similar environment across the triad of club, school and county is what's going to make the biggest difference to our players going forward. For me, it's not really about, what sports science you're going to throw at them, what nutrition you're going to throw at them, what, skill development is very, very important. But for me, there's a bigger umbrella, and that's the environment. And I think we have to learn how to create an appropriate environment and share it across 3 strands. And I suppose that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to get us away from being the sausage factory. I'm trying my very, very best to move us away from trying to develop the similar sausage every time it comes out of the machine. 2 coaches looking at the sausages. If they're perfect, they go on. If there's any fault with the sausage, it can't go on the shelf, so it gets kicked out. We have to move away from this analogy. We have to move away from thinking as coaches that we are here playing God with children and ultimately treating them as these 2 workers are treating the sausages. You pump in all the ingredients, we hope every single sausage comes out the exact same so it fits in the package. For me, talent development is completely different to that. And that's my fear. My fear is we're moving this direction. It's a huge fear I have. Our context is completely different to the Premiership. Our context is completely different to rugby. Our context is completely different to every other thing that happens in the world of sport. We are an amateur organisation, an amateur game, working across 3 strands, sharing a player across 3 strands. And in some counties, hurling and football going at the same time. That's complex. That's nothing got to do with sausages. So, a lot of my interest fed me towards Scandinavia, because they seem to get a bit right. And just watch the space with these people, because they're leading the line in terms of what talent development could look like and what talent development environments could look like. And in that, researchers from Scandinavia have given us a broad outline, a very, very broad outline of what we could include in all of our environments across the 3 strands here in this country. And the first thing that they advise us to do is they think that talent, and I've kind of touched on it, it's non-linear. So what's going to happen with a 14-year-old this year might be completely different when he's 15. He's going to go through peaks and troughs through his career, so we have to be patient. We ultimately have to be severely patient. And I was delighted to see that Ryan had the image of the slow-cooked roast turkey for Christmas. That's exactly it. It's exactly it. We ultimately have to be so patient with this. It's not a snapshot. So when you have trials and you look at teams and you look at players and you say, he's in, he's in, he's in, he's out, he's out, he's out, that is not an environment we want to create. So the first point in the environment is that it's elongated. It's an elongated process. It takes time. And the image on the right is actually borrowed from a very good book on talent development, Collins and McNamara, where they show a bleep test at 12 and the exact same boys at 13. So this guy, number 1, he finished up 3rd or 4th the following year. Number 2 finished up, where's 2 guys? Oh, he's here. He finished up, I think that's 7th, right? So if you're basing, which some people do and some sports do, selection on physiological testing, year to year is going to change. So snapshots are no good for us. We need to get to know the players. It's a long, long process. And in getting to know them, you also have to get to know the people who are working with them. So here, if you're a school manager, how much communication do you have with the academy manager? How much communication do you have with the club manager? If you're the academy manager, how much communication do you have with 2 of them and their parents? So that's the whole ecology that we're trying to get to. The next thing is the Goldilocks dilemma, it's called. So the just right approach to development and the learning environment, in other words, the coach. So we have look, in sport all over the world this happens, but we have a habit of reproducing maybe what we learned ourselves when we were being coached, or reproducing what somebody else did last week, or going and watch a senior inter-county session and reproducing it with the under-14s. That doesn't work. So getting it just right is quite difficult. For example, if I wanted to learn how to ski and I go off and I learn on the slopes in Austria, I probably am only on holidays for a week. I probably think I want to ski at the end of the week, and I probably am going to get coached by some fella or some girl on the slopes who's going to use demonstration. Look at me, this is the way you do it, sit this way. Who's going to use loads of feedback as I'm doing it. This is the way to do it. No, you have to do this way. No. And it's a block of a week. Now, if I want to do something fast, that's fine. If I want to become good at football and hurling in 7 years' time, maybe it takes a different approach to get me to there. Maybe all the skills need to be mixed up, that they don't come in a block, as the ski instructor wants to do. Maybe the feedback needs to be different. Maybe the feedback needs to be, you're going to have to work this out a bit. It could be this, it could be that. Maybe the demonstration needs to be showing you multiple ways of doing something, which way it fits for you, rather than saying, this is the way. So getting the learning environment is very, very difficult. And I suppose as coaches, the key thing there for me is, do you know what you're doing? Do you know why you're doing what you're doing? We all presume we know what we're doing, but do we know why? I think, again, we're only touching on things here, but these all add up to the end. Another crucial one, the support of relationships. So when you're 12, the important person obviously is your parents. They'll bring you to the coaching, they'll guide you, they'll mind you, they'll help you. The coach then is the next person. Ultimately, this comes down to your peers. So within the group, you have to have an environment where peers support peers. And ultimately, if one of the peers in the group is the bad apple, then he has to go. Because the level of influence that 15, 16 peers have over each other is too great to allow the bad apple to stay. So within your environment, if it's going to be supportive, it has to have massive standards. And then, this is the big one. I know I said it all the time, this is the big one. But the autonomous psychosocial development, I know that sounds very grand, right? But what we're trying to do is ultimately empower the players within our environment. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is the players become the coaches. For that to happen, we have to spend huge time in our training developing these psychosocial skills. Massive time. How do you expect, with what we do, a man of 24 or 5 to survive inside Crow Park and everything that it comes with on All Ireland final day, if we don't give him these skills along the way? If we don't develop things like grit, determination, self-confidence, self-regulation, all those things can be developed in training sessions. And you don't need a psychologist to do it. But if you get the chance when you're training teams to actually extract yourself away and still observe and see what goes on, it tells an interesting story. It'll also tell you the level of development in terms of psychosocial development. So that's what the slide is intimating. If you're the coach or away, the mice will play. What goes on? What's said? Like, one of the things in terms of this, and I've seen this done in Gloucester with rugby, one of the things they do with their younger players is they try to integrate them into the senior setup as a sub or as a water carrier or as something else quite regularly. Now, he might only be 16 or 17, but he gets a taste of what it's like. I've seen also what they have done is that they brought the team or the youth teams out at half time in front of the crowd and do a training session, put them under pressure. They do this on purpose. If you go back to what I said earlier on about the late entries into the academies, they come in late with resilience developed and they pass out the people who are in the academy. Why? It's been too easy for the people who are with inside. So what we have to try and do is develop challenge in the environment to make the people inside the same as the fellas outside in terms of resilience. And that's not easy. Making it too easy leads to problems in the end. Now, diversification. Take those 3 boys. Now, I don't know who they are from Adam, I just picked the picture up from the internet, but 3 boys. Just take the first boy there on the left. He gets deselected at 16 years of age. He loves Dublin, he loves football, he loves his club, his identity is forming. He probably has 3 to 4 different identities at this stage. One social identity, one his parents' identity at home, one in school, one with his friends. But one of the key things about driving his identity is the fact he's good at football. Now, the rug has just been pulled underneath him. He's under 16, he's gone. Dublin have said, no, you didn't make the squad. His identity is immediately attacked. And if we're not diversifying outside sport and telling him all the other stuff that he's good at and just directing him towards football only, and I'm not talking about playing other sports when I'm saying this, that has a role to play too, but if we're just directing him and saying, you're good at football, you're good at football, you're good at football, and we don't find the other stuff that he's good at, we're in trouble. Because don't forget, only 1% get to the very top. The second thing is, the boy in the middle. He gets through and he plays minor. He's now playing under 20, and then he doesn't make the senior team. For him, at 21 years of age, he's devoted his whole life to football or hurling, and now the rugs have been pulled underneath him. He'll go through what's called identity foreclosure, where he actually goes back and lives the life of a 15-year-old when he's 22. So he starts wearing the clothes of 15-year-olds, he starts getting drunk, he never drank before. His family are looking at him and saying, this has gone crazy. What's after happening? Because we've attacked his identity, an identity that he only knew up to now, but our environment never prepared him for what this is going to be like when you don't get there. And finally, this is the guy here who has 7 All-Ireland medals. He has lived the dream, and the game is now over. He's 32, 33. He's finished. GA was the only thing that drove him for his whole life. Where does he go next? His sole identity was Gaelic football and hurling. It's now finished. We have a problem because we never prepared him for all the little stuff that he was good at. We just loaded it, loaded it, loaded it. So this diversification is absolutely crucial within, I suppose, the learning environment, within the environment of development, because without it, we're going to have a problem somewhere along the line, because one of those 3 things are going to happen to you. Deselection when you're older, retirement. One of those 3 things is going to happen. So we need to prepare them for it. Now, here's the big one. So we have our 3 areas again, club, school and county. We have, I suppose, around that we have a culture. So there's a different culture in Cork than there is in Tyrone. Thanks be to God, it's Tyrone people, I would imagine. But very, very different culture in the different counties. So in terms of driving culture and driving values, in terms of the environment you're trying to build, there's 3 levels. And again, we're only touching on these things. The first level is the base level, is artefacts. So you see everybody going around, even today, I see you all wearing your club tops or county tops. That's an expression of where you're from. So if you go into Garvaghey and you see all the stuff inside the centre, it looks absolutely terrific in terms of building an identity for Tyrone. Now, I'm not speaking about Tyrone because it's the exact same in other counties as well. But the thing is, the middle part, which I found in my research, the goals, the philosophies, vision statements, I don't know, do many counties, our schools, our clubs, have they set out what is it we're trying to do? What is it we're trying to build? How do we express that? So we express where we're from, but do we express what we're trying to do here? So there's no guiding philosophy. And then the big one, even in places in sport where they do express their philosophy, say we respect everybody, we value teamship, the basic assumptions are actually what actually happens. So if they don't match up, you have a problem. So what I'm saying is we need to build environments with those 5 or 6 things from the previous slides, and then this is the big one, build a culture and a value set that is common across the 3, so that the player ultimately doesn't become confused and that his development can take place and he can get onto that straight road at some stage. Doesn't have to be at the start, but at some stage. And whatever potential he has can be worked into talent. Finally, I'm rushing through a lot of stuff here. 15 minutes is a tight squeeze. How long have I gone on for? 20? 25. Oh, jeez. Finally, here it is. We want uniformity in terms of the environment, but not the people. We want uniformity in terms of matching artefacts with espoused values, with basic assumptions. But at the end of the day, this comes down to people. So culture, people, communication, relationships. Now, I'm not from Ulster. I'm from obviously the very bottom of the county. But when I look in at these guys over the last 20 years, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I look in at these guys, and I've only been there once. But dripping through them, I see an expression that everybody understands why they're doing what they're doing. I see a sense of belief in this is the way we do it around here. And I see no apology for that. Now, is that fair to say, Paul? I'm not sure, but that's what I think. And I'd say, to be honest about it, what we're trying to build in what the work we're doing at the moment, what we're trying to build is ultimately that we get some uniformity in terms of developing the environments, but that ultimately this person, the person in the middle, will come the important bit rather than all the bits on the side. Give me a map there.
Brian, thank you very much indeed. Mickey and Paul, listen, very welcome up onto the stage. Okay, I'm just going to immediately open that to the floor because there's the broad breadth of stuff there, Brian. So folks, any questions? Eugene's got a microphone. There's a lot of a wide range of topics. So go on ahead, sir.
Just Brian, from your experience now on the ground in Cork, working with squads from minor to senior, and your research, is our system of development squads and academies, is it doomed to failure? And what's the ratio of loss to gain from the various counties, from all the investment of time and money that has gone into that over probably 15 years?
They're very, very straight questions. I don't think we're doomed to failure. That's the first thing. But I do think ultimately there are other ways of doing it. And I suppose what I'm saying today is that science will tell us that we should be keeping as many as we can for as long as we can within the system or within the structure. I also do think there has to be some outlet for good players, but that can come at the cost of dysfunction at club level and schools level. So I suppose what I'm ultimately saying to you, to answer your question, the other way for me is a much more coordinated approach across the three strands. I think if you can develop that, we're on the pig's back. If you can develop that sense of synergy, I might be naive saying it, but if we could develop that, we'd have a totally different model, and I would be very, very, very proud to be associated with anything like that.
Okay, anybody else? Question, folks? Nobody as yet. Paul, if I could go on to you. There is somebody? Yeah, go on ahead, sir.
Just again to Brian, if you don't mind. I agree with everything that you're saying there, and I wonder if you could fix the problem with my wife.
I can't help you with your wife, but I can't manage my own one.
Where I'm from, we don't have an issue. There's other codes involved and around, and there's development squads now at under 10, 11, 12 in relation to soccer, and I'm having a huge problem. Even at home, trying to convince my own missus that it's not right for our 10-year-olds to be in that environment. And the argument of mine is it because it's not a selection process, it's a rejection process. And how, from coaching and coaching officers' point of view, do we send that message, and without, dissing other codes or getting out about them, how do we deliver that message to our parents in the club? Can they help?
Yeah, I think again that's a common trend that's happening more and more in other codes. I think Man City actually were looking for an under-7 academy to be set up this year, which is absolutely ridiculous. And like if Man City start doing it, your local soccer team will start doing it as well. My advice: leave them do it. Leave them do it, and see what happens. So if they're going at under 9, under 10, as you say, it's going to be a rejection process. Let us be ready for those boys when they come back to us with open arms, develop already a sense of resilience, and put them into an environment where they can flourish and where they can feel good about themselves and where they can feel that they're going to be safe. Because when you talk to the boys around the country at 16 years of age, one of the biggest feelings they have is the feeling of pressure. They feel they're under pressure to perform. They're a county player at 16. They feel they're different to their friends. They feel that this is a hard thing to do, to tell managers I can't play and I can't train. So if soccer are doing that or rugby are doing that, for me, I would borrow your phrase, they're doomed to failure.
Okay, any more questions there, folks? Yeah, this gentleman here. Yeah, I'll get that.
I asked Paul one there just when he's sitting and he doesn't mind.
No, let Brian work away.
Not asked you, just to get across here. Paul, you've been working in the player development pathway in Armagh. So what sorts of things are you putting in place to bring the players through and make them better players and get them in a position where they can go back to their clubs, better players, or go on into inter-county?
The first thing I want to say is that I was just blown away by Brian's presentation. I suppose the thing that screams out is about, both the county level and club level, is participation. Like participation, like you go to, we've all, but you go to under 10 blitzes or with the youngsters or and the next thing is all like win. But ultimately, to me, the success of any club team should be that those people in their 30s are still involved in the club. Their playing capacity or non-playing capacity. And ultimately, from a county point of view that he has been involved, and ultimately it's something that I don't think you ever arrive at, like, but it's the thing that Brian talks about, the one that jumps out in my mind is Kieran Hughes. Another one is Andrew McGrane. Kieran Hughes never played underage football. When he came into the senior squad, he was a breath of fresh air. Why? Probably because he had a chip on his shoulder. He had a chip on his shoulder, going to say, you see these odd boys here, they've been getting it, maybe they got it easy, he says, I want to come and go and prove a point. And it's that point then, like, ultimately there's maybe courses on there about developing resilience, but ultimately you want to go on, in my opinion, is to give youngsters is the tools to go and improve, the tools to go and deal with setbacks, that they can go and push on. And that's from a club point of view, and also from a county point of view.
Okay, thanks.
Just to echo Paul's sentiments there, just brilliant presentation, Brian, really interesting. I suppose what jumps out at me is even Lincoln this morning, there's all this talk about mental well-being and all that type of stuff, and it's very much linked into what you're talking about. It goes back to the environment and the culture. And again, what we're trying to do as an organisation across clubs, counties and everything is keep participation levels high, and even whether a player is maybe not the best player, but they might end up being involved with their club as a very active administrator or whatever it may be. So I suppose the $1 million question is, how do we do this? I know there's a committee set up at Croke Park, and you're looking at it. It strikes me what you're saying about the development, and I suppose the theme of the whole day has been between club, school and county, and those links and communications. How do we actually do that? Because probably, if truth be told, we've all been through these systems at one level or another, and there's not that communication. There just isn't. Maybe it's starting, but how do we do it, or what's the way in, or this is not going to happen overnight, obviously, but how do we start that process? Across the board to anybody.
Who's Brian Ship? And just a wee point that I was saying in respect to that is that probably the elephant in the room in respect to all the stuff from seniors right down has to be fixtures. So I mean, like, under 17s last year, as county under 17s, club minors play on Monday night, club under 16s play on a Thursday evening. We were planning through Tuesday, training session, Friday. You just pull it, you back off. And then in the middle of it then, there's a schools competition. So ultimately the last thing you want to go and do is put pressure on youngsters. And again, ultimately you're trying to give them tools to go and develop. I mean, appreciate that it's nearly their responsibility to go and develop all. Do you know what I mean? If they want to go and remember hearing years ago, like, I mean, the forward who's scoring is the forward who's practicing. But maybe people don't realise that it's as simple as that. But ultimately give the youngsters tools that. But that's why I think the big elephant in the OGA thing is the fixtures. And if it wants to sort it, it can sort it.
Maybe Mickey could answer that, Thomas.
Yeah, because I was going to, Mickey, in terms of the camogie and hurling, you're sort of crossing both things there. You think, in terms of Stotney, St Pat's Mahara, very good college, playing high-level hurling, high-level football. So, just what Paul touched on there, I mean, it must be a massive problem, particularly in Stotney.
I think over the years we've noticed that school came first for a lot of the time. School did, and we allowed our players to play away to school. We did have a lot of players in St Pat's, both camogie and hurling. We tried to liaise with teachers in the schools to allow that to happen. Fair enough, we met last night, and that was one of the topics of talk in our meeting with the senior camogie team, preparing for this next All Ireland. But we do, in terms of player development, I'm best for us to talk about soccer for the last 12 years. When I came into the club in terms of coaching, there was no real structure. In terms of player development, what we had to do was we had to try to develop some competency at each level in our coaches. So when our players moved on from under 16, under 10, under 12, they were competent. I think that's what's happened from 2006 onwards, and it's probably in relation to success of that. It's a big part of it, putting that structure in place in terms of player development. We probably the club at that time, we did development of teams where we changed it around to look at developing players with potential of it. So we looked at developing players, and that's a key thing in Slough-Neil. And I think when you go to the team sheets of the senior teams at this moment in time, a lot of them players went through that system in 2006, with their development competencies are coming through, and then come out of winning the senior level. So I think definitely the school thing is really important. I think in terms of development, it's really important. I think in terms of coaches have to talk. I think Brian mentioned earlier about coaches talking to school teachers who are coaching teams, and teachers talking to academy squad teachers. There is no communication. I've seen that through development squad, working development squad level in Derry, where we have players coming on a Wednesday night who have played matches on a Wednesday day for schools, and we know nothing about it. So I'm sure all the counties have faced that in both codes. So it's probably the last leg Brian's job is about communication, isn't it? I think that's a big crux and a big key to our players moving on.
So I guess going back to that, Brian, how do you resolve that? Because that's been going on for years.
Yeah, well, you see, I don't think kids now are going to accept it. I think we accepted it. You know, no choice. I think now they're not going to accept it. They just go and play something else. I think it comes down to communication, definitely, but it also comes down to governance. To answer your question, and the elephant in the room is the calendar. So until that's started out, you can have all these ideas, but you're never going to be able to actually put them into practice. So it's governance. It comes down to, do the GA at the very different levels want what's best for the players? In our process of consultation, the sentence that hits most in my head every day is a boy of 15 in Tipperary in Thurles said to me, he said, my coach values me when I can play for him. Right? My coach values me when I can play for him. So immediately in my head I turned it, when I'm coaching, am I omitting the same message? You're good when you're with me, but I don't want you with Eugene, I don't want you with Paul, because they'll mess you up. Are our egos that big? I don't know. So somebody needs to govern that, and somebody needs to organise calendar. So those two.
Okay, good. What's going on here?
Just a question then for Brian. Would you agree that putting the minor All-Ireland or the under-17 All-Ireland on the main day of the year, rather than maybe putting a secondary competition on by the GA, is causing some of the problems that people see these development squads as getting our minor team ready that we can achieve at the highest level then?
I think that's maybe like a smaller point in respect of the fixtures. Like, I think from a minor point of view, what I would say is that probably was taken away from minors when we went to under 17s was the fact that they didn't play before county seniors, the championship match. Is that the be all and end all? No, it's not. Like, but I think it's a great place for youngsters coming through. Something you want to aspire to. Do they need to go and win the Ulster minor championship? Do they need to go and win All Ireland? No, but I think it is something special. Going back to my own time with it, it's changed under 17s. Would I agree with that? No, I wouldn't agree with under 17 thing. Like, and I think ultimately, it's to make the views in respect to 17. Like, you stand back and like, there's an intercounty view that the 17 and that there's the 20s, right? But the clubs aren't aligned with that. So that in itself is great. That's creating issues straight away, right? So the fact that it's pulling 17s today and playing before it, I wouldn't say that it's great for them.
Yeah, but you're such a high profile. Do you not think that that's why people are putting so much into these development squads and striking 30s and, you know, people, as Brian said, are being left to one side? It's not player development because it's more driven towards achieving the minor team that's going to go on and win an Ulster or win an All-Ireland or whatever.
I have no issue. You see the 17 finals on full senior time, I hate no issue that says. That's been honestly my own personal opinion on it. I think from an early stage in the competition, I think it's nice that they won't play a four senior game. And I don't think that would go only push them on then to go on and say that they're driven to go and actually do that. Like, but just it's given them an opportunity to go on. Brian talked about it in the presentation when we were Gloucester, but the young ones, maybe a lower level, coming from an age group point of view, coming on at half time, just to go and experience that. And I think it's no bad thing to go and inspire to. I know what you're saying is going to push, because ultimately now, and going back to playing under-age football years ago, like there would have no under 6s or under 10s, under 12s. Schools, there's more schools competition than there ever was. I'm talking about from an Ulster schools point of view, organisation one, but there's more schools competitions now than there ever was. And yes, there was no development squad years ago, and now it's taken off. And then there's like 3 separate branches, and ultimately, yes, it comes down to communication. But why then do you not just go and sort out from a fixture point of view? That would be my thought with it. But I don't disagree that, I mean, if the 17s wasn't played before, no issue with that.
Okay, fast running out of time. Time for one more question in the back. Yeah, go for it.
Where are we going with GA? We're asking more and more, is it now all about the county player and the revenue that the county players can bring in? And if we go down the same route as the rugby academies and the IRFU put club rugby on its knees, and if we go down the same route, then I think that the GA club level will be on a slippery slope. and somebody else said there, doomed to failure.
Okay, Brian, I want to come back to you. There's a couple of points there, and that, so I'll allow you to respond. First of all. There's a couple of things there. So,
to your question, I don't think anybody can tell you right now where the GA is going in 5 years' time, or what's after happening in the GA in terms of the two areas you're talking about. I don't have the answer to that, but what I can tell you, first of all, you ask a lot of small questions in what you say. Just so there's no misinformation, I suppose the group I'm working with isn't about the county player. It's actually about alignment, so that we won't get what exactly you talked about in terms of the rugby academies and soccer academies. The fear all over the country, and we're all club people, the fear all over the country is that that could happen. I think what the GA are trying to do is make sure it doesn't happen. So there's a bit of misinformation there on that one. Do you want to ask me any more, Tom?
No, you're happy how that's covered, because I know you asked sort of 4 or 5 different points there, but I mean, these academies things, I made a documentary across McGrane for 2 years, and they sort of prided themselves that they don't send to the county setup and they do their own, and I suppose I was really taken back by that, and that I suppose because Cross McGlane, that they're seen as one of the best in the business. To me, I felt it was quite unfair because it pours scorn on some of the great work that's being done in academies. So over the last 6 months, a lot of people, just hand over the mic there, a lot of people have been talking about this, Paul. They sort of, they see it as a good thing or a bad thing, and they've almost become divisive in many respects. Now I would say from the outside that seems unfair, but is that something you're finding on the ground?
The first point I would like to Thomas is that Cross McGlane actually do send to the academy schools. I mean, I know myself work with Wayne O'Neill, Ocean O'Neill, Steve Morris, Shane Farley, we go through a lot of them.
At a previous time, they were
that they would want to do that. I suppose that, it's the price that's probably been thrown out here. Probably the state affairs at the minute in respect to academies, some counties are further on developed in respect than other ones are. There's a thing about exclusion, there's the thing there about Brian talked about himself, how many people are actually coming through, how many people are so-called rejections or waste, and what is the definition of it? Are we going to go back to the club? I think it's something that ultimately has to be looked at from the point of view of something to the point that everybody is equal. That's fair enough, everybody's equal, but ultimately when it comes to like a county senior squad, there's a squad of 30 fellas, and you're working towards that. And I would ultimately see that as being an end line as opposed to an under 17 or an under 20. And they make shapes in respect of that, you won't do that. And as Grant pointed out in his presentation, there's no straight line for it. There's various ways you want to do it. From the example reported previously about Kieran Hughes, Paddy McDonald. There's different people from different points of it. Whereas the academy schools are at the minute, I don't think it's from our maths point of view, I would say ultimately we want to go and refresh it and we go and improve it again. I know there's been feedback going around all the counties in respect of the academies at the minute. Where are they leading? I'm not too sure. I suppose we can back to you in your own, like in your own club in your own county, but you can go and have there and go and improve it all. So where it's at the minute, no, is it the finished model? No, it's not. But that's what's there at the minute, and ultimately it's the one trying to improve.
Okay, brilliant. Gentlemen, I'll have to leave it there because time's running on. Thank you very much indeed. Round of applause.